Today on the Matt Walsh Show, the country, as I'm sure you noticed, is being ripped to shreds at the moment, dismantled by people who claim that they are victims of oppression and persecution. But the oppression and persecution are imaginary. Their claims of being oppressed and persecuted are verifiably, demonstrably, obviously false. So why is this really happening? Why is our society, which is freer and richer than any other society that has ever existed on Earth, coming apart at the seams at the moment? I want to spend the show today analyzing that question. So that's what's coming up today on the show.
Not stop at criminal justice system. We must begin the work of dismantling the whole system of oppression wherever we find it.
The whole system of oppression must be dismantled, she says. And that system is, she says, our economic and political system. So that's what she wants to dismantle, to be clear. Now, you listen to that and you really wonder whether any non-Western country would ever tolerate the absurdity of an immigrant coming to their country, obtaining political power, and then openly working towards the goal of dismantling the very system that gave them refuge in the first place. And the answer to that question is no. No non-Western country would ever tolerate that or allow it, and neither should we. Think about Ilhan Omar's position, okay? This country gave her everything. She came here for refuge, received it, and then was quickly given power and prestige beyond the imagining of most natural-born citizens, which you would think would mean that she would live every day in gratitude for America and what it gave to her. But instead, she despises America and most of its citizens. I have never heard her utter any gratitude at all. I have never heard her say thank you to America for giving her everything. Instead, she comes here, gets everything, and all she does every day is demand more. And that in itself wouldn't be so bad. I mean, being greedy and selfish that's a lot of people are that. That's common. But the worst part is that she demands more while slandering this country and its people. And you know, this country that has already given her more than most white people will ever receive. So it's the slander, the constant lies, the desperate attempt to make America seem like the nightmarish dystopia that she apparently wishes it was. Systems of oppression. Okay. What oppression? What are you talking about? What oppression exactly? And this is an important question because Omar, along with everyone else on the left and in the media and everyone out there looting and rioting and protesting and tearing down statues, all of these people are talking about this oppression, this persecution, saying that they're oppressed. But none of them can explain what exactly the oppression is or provide evidence of it. And that's because it's imaginary. They're inventing it. It isn't real. They are not oppressed. Take this example, just one example of a million. Okay, just to go over it again, what are the actual statistics on police killing people? According to a Washington Post database, and this is far from a far-right organization that's trying to, get police off the hook, 25 unarmed whites were killed by cops last year. 14 unarmed blacks were killed. The whole year. Across the whole country. And it would be totally irrational to assume that all of those killings were automatically unjustified just because the person was unarmed. Remember that Obama's DOJ found that the killing of Michael Brown, who was unarmed, was justified because he was rushing at and trying to kill a cop. So many of the unarmed killings are like that. You've got a small minority of police killings that are unarmed, and a small minority of those that are questionable. And that's it. So the facts don't support these claims of oppression. And yet you've got people marching through the street with signs like this. You see these signs all over the place. Stop killing us, the signs say. Who are you talking to? Who is killing you? What are you talking about? The vast majority of people of any race who are killed by other private citizens of that same race. So who are you talking to? It's even more ridiculous than that because these protesters with these signs aren't talking about murder in general. They're talking about an imaginary epidemic of white people and white cops going on racist rampages and murdering black people. An article in The Atlantic also makes this claim. It says, right at the top, it says, "I want white people to stop killing us." They're not. It's a very rare occurrence. That is extremely rare. More black people are killing white people than white people are killing black people. And in fact, considering that there are so many fewer black people in the country, the statistical likelihood that a black person kills a white person is exponentially higher than the other way around. This again is the reality. Plain as day. But the reality doesn't matter. McDonald's tweeting these conspiracy theories about some sort of imaginary epidemic of anti-trans hate crimes. In fact, nearly all of the largest and richest corporations in America are spreading the utterly false talking points of BLM. Colin Kaepernick has been able to parlay his supposed oppression into multi-million-dollar deals with 3 major corporations, Disney, Nike, and Netflix. Vanity Fair has an article calling Cap a burgeoning media mogul. This is oppression? This is what oppression looks like in America? You can turn your oppression into a media franchise worth millions of dollars? Then if that's the case, I mean, God, let me be oppressed, please. I pray for that kind of oppression. Meanwhile, we've got leftists inventing hate crimes, fabricating them. Nearly every week is another example. People are so desperate to be actually oppressed that they're just making it up. As we talked about yesterday, a bunch of college students are now claiming that they're traumatized. They're so traumatized by a joke that some kid tweeted about George Floyd that they can't go back to school. A tweet. We can't find actual white racist oppressors out there killing black people. Then let's make these 2 white people painting over some words on the street into our racist oppressors. Why not? Or let's make a garage door pull into a hate crime. Why not? Oh, but the black man who pummeled a white Macy's employee, that's not a hate crime. Or the black man who knocked over a 92-year-old white woman and she hit her head on a fire hydrant, that's not a hate crime. Or the black man who beat a white woman with 2x4s in New York, that's not a hate crime. Yes, but the white folks with paint who painted over letters on the street committed a hate crime. Oh, but the vandals who are literally burning buildings and tearing down priceless works of art, those aren't hate crimes either. But this is, you see, that's how it works. The whole thing is a farce. This is no crisis. Towns and states across the country are declaring racism a public health crisis. It's not. The only crisis is the one that leftist protesters and the media and Democrats are inventing, creating. We are right now witnessing something that is probably unprecedented in the history of the world. A bunch of people who live lives of freedom and liberty and relative comfort and luxury are choosing to destroy their country because they've convinced themselves that they're the victims of a completely imaginary oppression. It's as though our society got bored with its own success and decided to eat itself for fun. Here's the reality. Unless you live in the inner city of Chicago or a city like that, you are safer, richer, more comfortable, more secure, and freer than almost everyone who has ever lived anywhere at any point, anywhere in the world. You are in the top 1%, if not in even more exclusive company than that. And in fact, even in the inner city, you are wealthy compared to a great portion of the world's population. You may not be very safe, but the danger you face is almost entirely from within your own community, from criminals and drug dealers and murderers within your community. It's not from racist agents of the state going around randomly killing people, because they're not doing that. The students at K-State who are traumatized over the tweet actually had the time and energy and luxury to protest over it. Watch this. They're marching through the street over a tweet that they didn't like. Imagine having that kind of luxury. So how is this all happening? Why are a bunch of spoiled brats who have been given everything and who have never been oppressed in their lives nonetheless trying to burn the country to the ground? Why are they going around screaming about imaginary monsters? Why are we watching our society self-destruct at a moment in history when it has achieved unprecedented wealth, luxury, and liberty? Well, we could spend, 12 hours or so dissecting this. I'm not going to spend 12 hours, but I do want to dissect it and try to answer that question. And we will do that in not simply luxuriate in our comforts. We cannot be happy that way. Decadence is not quite as fun or fulfilling as we thought it would be. So we need a struggle. We need some kind of struggle. Even as we sit in our homes, in our air conditioning, with refrigerators stocked with food, and we sit on our couches and we're comfortable. We watch TV or Netflix all day. What are we watching? The stories that we watch, the stories that we like to have told to us through whatever medium, are all stories of people struggling, fighting, overcoming. Those have always been, since time immemorial, ever since human beings have been telling stories to each other. Those are always the stories that we tell. And because we find something appealing about that. And I think we long to overcome something ourselves, to have our own fight, our own struggle. We can't be happy just witnessing the reenacted struggles of other people. We need to have our own. Now, there are basically two ways to go about this, to make your struggle for yourself. There's the healthy way, the way that will lead to actual fulfillment and a measure of happiness, and the unhealthy way, the way that will lead to destruction and despair and everything we're seeing right now. But you do it anyway. In my family, we garden, we raise chickens, we have bees, right? We don't need to do any of this. It's certainly a harder way to get your vegetables and eggs and honey, but we do it the hard way on purpose because we enjoy it. And in fact, I was just recently thinking that because I like to fish, I usually do catch and release, but I was thinking that, I'm going to start once a week actually bringing the fish home and, making a meal from what I catch. Now, going out and catching a fish and cleaning and gutting and cooking it, that is a very hard way to do something that you could do in 35 minutes if you just pulled some salmon or whatever out of your fridge and throw it into the oven. But I like the idea of doing it the hard way, of providing a meal for my family, actually providing it, not just buying it, but providing it. The reason is to do it the hard way just for the sake of doing it. That's it. Doing it for the sake of it. There was a time, of course, when the majority of human history, in fact, when people had no choice but to do everything the hard way. If you wanted something built, you had to build it. If you wanted something to eat, you had to grow it or catch it or kill it. And you notice that in those times, you rarely had people marching through the streets over imaginary oppression. Now, they might have marched over real oppression, but even then, most of the time, it took quite a bit of it for them to actually mobilize in any way. And then when they did mobilize, they mobilized in a serious way. But these people had their struggle. Every day was a struggle. They didn't need to create struggles for themselves. Because every other human need was not automatically met, the human need for struggle was met. Now, that's the way it was for them. And since it's not that way for us, we have to come up with our own struggles. We've talked about the healthy way of doing it. What about the unhealthy way to create struggle? Before we even get to the protesters, we all know people who create unhealthy struggles for themselves all the time. Think about the people who are constantly inventing drama and strife in their relationships. They can be perfectly happy in a relationship. Everything seems to be fine. And then one day they seem to almost just randomly destroy it for no reason. They have convinced themselves, but of course it's never their fault, right? They've convinced themselves that everyone is out to get them. All of their relationships fall apart, whether romantic relationships or familial relationships, whatever it is, relationships at work, friendships. All their relationships are always falling apart. They're always having problems with everybody. And from the outside, you can see that it's almost always their fault because these are extremely difficult and selfish, self-centered people. But in their minds, from their telling, they're victims. They just have enormously bad luck, and everybody they meet ends up being a terrible person and betrays them and backstabs them and everything else. These are people who are inventing a struggle. They live on drama and gossip and resentment and feelings of personal injury. They thrive on it because they are fulfilling that need for struggle that way. I think the protesters are in this camp. They are doing a version of this same thing. They are creating their struggle. These are people who have either outright rejected the healthy forms of struggle or who have found those forms unfulfilling because they're too selfish and weak to find fulfillment in the sacrifice they require. And I suspect that the majority are in the latter camp. These are largely people who don't have families of their own, who don't do anything for themselves, who've had everything handed to them, many times don't even have jobs. Everything is done for them. They live enormously easy lives. And now they're trying to fashion themselves into freedom fighters. Except they already have freedom. So instead, they're fighting dragons and boogeymen of their own imagination. And if they succeed in taking down the country, in dismantling it, as Ilhan Omar says she wants to do, they will have dismantled it in order to stop an oppression that they invented, that was only ever in their nightmares, or maybe in their dreams, I should say, because it's very obvious that they want to be oppressed. And then the great irony here, the very morbid irony, is that if they succeed in tearing down the country and destroying it, whatever replaces the old system that we had, the system that created all of this great luxury and wealth and freedom for everybody. If they get rid of that, then they will finally have, I think, the suffering and oppression that they wanted. But once they really have it, I don't think they're going to want it anymore. So I think we'll leave it there.